Hi guys, alright, so I'm just going to make a quick update on the speedrun. We have had our speedrun race 3. For those of you that are new to the speedrun and what it's about, the speedrun is a new form of circuit racing. It either flies triangles or out and back up to 140 kilometer distances. And it's the speedrun. It's all about speed. It's about flying as fast as you can, finishing the route as fast as you can. And it's really been exploding as far as popularity is going, simply because I think that the concept allows pilots to push their machines a bit harder. It's also it's not a very time-consuming format, meaning that we can do it short notice with the knowledge that there's good weather on the way. The last race we had something like 15 races that competed in Speedrun 3, and it's just getting more and more popular. People are really liking that you can finish a race within a morning's time, walk away with the knowledge that you need to improve on whatever went wrong, or you can celebrate the fact that you did something right. Okay, so some of the rule changes we made between Speedrun 1 and Speedrun 3 specifically came in to question, I would say, in Speedrun 2 that was hosted in the Lofau close to Nirvana, North Africa's Nirvana Africa's location. Basically we used to start the race in the air with all the pilots taken off. We used to just do a radio call and say, all right, everybody's airborne, let's start the race. And then it'll be going to an outer point, a mandatory landing, consumption of a donut. That is just to force people to get to the ground, spend some time on the ground. Whether you eat your donut in 10 seconds or 10 minutes, doesn't matter. That I think was just a fun way of getting pilots to do that landing. There's obviously a refuel possibility at that point. So the guys that did high consumption on their motors, they would use the opportunity to refuel, and then the fastest one that returns back to the base or the start point is the winner. And basically in Speedrun 1 and 2 that format worked, but we did realize that there is some premise to the fact that if you start the race on the ground, you are asking the pilots to bring another component to the race, and that would be whether the glider that you're using is A, easy to take off with, and B, that the racing pilot that the pilot has the skill to ace that first takeoff when the signal goes out. Now, the reason why I didn't do an update on Speedrun 2 was for two reasons. The one was that I wasn't really enthusiastic about sharing the fact that I had 2 blown takeoffs. I don't know what went wrong with me. I stepped on the line as I pulled up my glider, messed it up on the takeoff run. And the second one, I was so urgently trying to get airborne that I actually took off in a stall and landed in a stall. Fortunately, didn't break anything, whatever. Ran back up the hill and took off again. But fortunately, the rules back then was, everybody starts in there. So I think that there was a negative effect for some of those that have high fuel consumption, because those pilots that do get off airborne fastest, they burn fuel while waiting for weavers on the ground. So I proposed to all the race pilots that like to come to the events that we bring in a new rule, and that it is from the moment that the siren goes off or the signal is given, that the race starts with the takeoff. And that's what we brought into Speedrun 3. So before I get to Speedrun 3, I'm just going to do a recap on Speedrun 2's results. I did win Speedrun 2 again. Basically, the margin, what we tried to do there is that we had one race pilot for the importer for Nuviac that was racing the Cougar 3. I was racing the Warp 18 for Dudek, and both the Cougar and the Warp was combined with Nirvana engines. And then the third racer that we also wanted to invite was Nico Louis, that was racing the APCO with the APCO F1 combined with the HE 210 motor. I think it's the MV2, the new motor from HE. Okay, so basically the time separation was between first and second place was about 40 minutes. And if I'm gonna quote Mias de Klerk, the pilot, the importer for Nuviac, when he said that he doesn't have a problem losing the Cougar losing to the Warp, but he does have a problem with the huge time separation, how that's possible that it could count up to 40 minutes with the timing. And there's no way you can cheat this, because you have to fly to one point and fly back. If you've been on the ground, you consumed your donut, and that's it. And I would say that the reason why that was is the route specifically that we chose there it didn't come back to the same finish point, but went over to another point that was also the start point or the location for a paragliding race. So we try to combine the two venues, and the group of pilots that were, some PG pilots might have wanted to do the PPG race as well. And the route to the final finish point went over a mountain range, and it was quite a high mountain range, up to, I believe, 5,000 or 6,000 feet. And the great thing about what I would say, the advantage I had was I was at point 1 as the first pilot to arrive at point 1. I arrived ahead of Francois, also racing a Warp and Air Flight 200 combined, but he was due for a service, and it just so happened that his motor didn't want to start when he landed there, because it was just the carbon buildup was just too much in the decomp channel. So he couldn't turn over the motor, and it was just bad luck. I mean, we really thought that he had another day or two, at least another race before he has to do his service, his 12-month service. But all right, so he's back in the fold. He didn't take part in race 3 because of he had a loss in his company due to COVID fatality. All right, so condolences to that person. Anyway, so I was the first to arrive at point at the turn point. I would say at that point I had about a 10-minute margin on Francois, 10 to 15 minutes margin on Francois. But he then folded out of that. Then we had on the way back, I would say I was about 10 minutes out of the field on the return leg that I passed the Cougar and the F1 that was quite closely matched at that point. All right, so the big difference came in on the return leg over that mountain range. Now, this is the great thing about the F200 combined with a Warp. The two of them have enough power to climb at full speed bar at around 3 foot per second. Now, a lot of guys, if they're honest, are going to tell you that if they try and fly 50 miles an hour, around between 35 and 39 or 40 knots, if they try and maintain those speeds on speed bar, then they don't really have a climb rate. They might have a sink rate. If they're lucky, they have enough power to maintain altitude. On my side, I've got about a 500 RPM. On the two-blade, I have about a 500 RPM difference between climbing and maintaining altitude. So that equals to around 3 foot per second climb rate. And that's a lot. That's a lot for full speed bar 38 knots. And so I could just, as soon as I exited that turn point and I started climbing I just went into climb mode and I climbed over the mountain range in full speed bar. So it was climbing at around 38 knots. If you had to subtract anything from the headwinds and whatever else, that's, the ground speed, excluding any wind, is around 38 knots. With just the full trim speed, and then with the full speed bar, I'm doing around 42 to 44 knots. So that was around the speed that I was climbing at when I went over that mountain range. And the end result factored into a 40-minute difference, and I was hoping that gap could close in on Speedrun 3. Third place after the Cougar, Mias with his Cougar Nirvana setup, it was Nicolui that came in with the F1 and the H210. So a lot of this is also, so you got a couple of factors that play into it. It's your ability to take off from the return point as well. It's the fuel consumption on your motor. So, and also the efficiency of your glider. So if your efficiency is bad on the glider, you're going to consume more fuel on your motor. If your motor is too small, you're going to burn too much fuel to try and maintain those speeds. So you see it's kind of like a combination of things that you got to get right when you do your planning for a speedrun. It's very different from the Icarus in the sense that the Icarus is about consistency, whereas this is about consistency plus performance and having gear that is efficient all around. Okay. So I believe Nicolui came in around an hour 40 after myself. So it was quite a big spread between 3 and 1. Between 2 and 1 is about 40 minutes, and there wasn't any pilots that finished in 4th place. But most of them quit at turn point 1. There was about another 3 or 4, I think about 4 pilots that quit at turn point 1, simply because there was a huge headwind, and they didn't feel that their gliders were going to be able to take that headwind and have enough forward speed. And secondly, they were worried about going over that mountain range with a huge headwind and a possibility of rotor. Okay, so that was the result for race 2. The race 3, we brought in new rules. Starting on the ground, that's the race time, so it's a radio call on the ground. Everybody gets off the ground. It's also, I'm not the one setting the race off anymore. It's now a safety officer appointed. That usually it's like a club chairman or a instructor that puts checks the conditions and does the radio call for everybody to take off. We had 15 races on the field. We moved the location to Gauteng, which is in one of our largest PPG communities, and to the Skywalk facility, so they provided the staff to do the turn points. And the reason why I wanted to move Speedrun away from Nirvana Africa's location was simply because I'd like to share the speedrun, in the sense that a lot more people that don't really want to travel can then come to a local race. And secondly, it was then now moving to the turf of the F1, the APCO F1 guys. This is a place that they race. It's their altitude. It's a high altitude field of around takeoff is around 5,000 feet. So it's a high altitude field. And the conditions, the general race will be at a higher altitude than it would be here at Nirvana Africa's location. So the result from race here, it was a little bit different in the sense that we had 2 mandatory landing locations. The first one, you had to have a donut and you could possibly refuel, and then you got to take off again, get onto the second point. There's a marshal there as well to check that you landed, and then you could refuel again, I guess, if you wanted to. It wasn't really a mandatory refuel site, but you had to land, check in, and then move on to the end location. What made this a really fantastic location was that it had to cross a mountain range twice. And the mountain range that you got to take off from the field up to the top end of the mountain, you got to, there's when you want to cross that mountain with double the mountain, or you want to at least be clear of the rotor, any possibility of rotor. And there was rotor on that day. So with a 500-foot clearance, you'd have to have quite a bit of climb rate if you were going to get off the field. It's about 2-kilometer range, and then you can pop over the mountain and then continue on to the race. You had to cross the mountain twice in a triangle. I'm going to post some of these images while I'm talking on it. You guys can see what the route looked like. So it was a triangle race. And I arrived at point 1. I was first off the ground. Fortunately, when the radio call came out, I was ready, got off the ground, despite being late for the race. It was terrible. And then, I was first at turn point 1, which was about a 15-minute margin. I was actually ahead of the donuts. That's how quick I was there. I could see a paramotor arriving, and I decided, listen, I'm going to make a safety call, called the instructor and said, listen, the donuts ain't here. I don't need any fuel. Can I get off the ground? I've already been waiting for about 15 minutes.
I never switch sides, like even when I die, I'ma ride for the squad, ladder ties in the hearse. I've been on the vibe, kinda hard to describe. I'm in between, I'm good and it's fine, but I'm tired of the grind. Then I come alive in the night to realize I'm in the middle of the time of my life. I never so packed for the stack, never lied on the rap. Got a bag from the way that I write it. Queen looking Tyson, do that ass survive, doing 80 to the house, then I hit it to the sky, change haters on the time.
And got the all clear for that. Got off the ground with a visual of the second guy approaching, which I thought was it had to be. And there were so many good races that added onto this race. We had Air Conception 280s, Air Conception 200s. We had APCO F1s. We had Ozones, free rides coming into the race. We had the X-Fire Pro that was on the race as well. couple of good guys. And for the first time, we had Red Bull's chief pilot here in Africa. That was Glui. His nickname is Glui. He was going to race also the MV2 with the APCO F1 glider, and I was really looking forward to the result between the Whoop and him as well, because we raced his partner Nicky Louis on the F1 as well for quite a few times. Basically, the result that came out from that turn, the turn point one, it wasn't the F1 that was coming in second. It was Yaku Swanepoel on a Hadron 3 combined with a Nirvana 200, and that was a surprising result. And he overtook the F1 and came in second, and that was great to see. And then the rush after that, the Russia pilots came in, so I kind of missed that camaraderie of the guys trying to get off the ground. This was a very, very difficult location because it was an airstrip to land in, and if the wind is cross to this airstrip, any crosswind, you'd be in trouble, because you'd have to have either any direction takeoff capability on your glider, or you're going to struggle to get over a 6-foot fence. It's a very narrow strip. It was used in Icarus to great effect. For this, trapped a lot of pilots, trapped me in, including myself, on the Icarus with the Hadron XX. I just couldn't get off crosswind takeoff, couldn't pull that off, couldn't pull off a crosswind takeoff either. And so this it didn't quite have the same effect. It wasn't complete crosswind, it was a little bit of cross. And so it was a dynamic that added that if you're not able to ace the takeoff from the strip, that it was going to set you back in the time. Turn point 2, easy in and out, a very big runway, nice green fields to land in. I've never been to this field before. It was a surprise to me that it just popped out of the green, and I was able to land there, get off the ground quick. Didn't reload, didn't refuel. I just checked I do have a reserve system that's capable. There were some images circling on the internet afterwards. It was quite funny, and people were wondering what the system was, because there was this pipe leading up to my one strut, and they couldn't figure out what this was. And it was actually my way of having a reserve fuel tank system. Besides the capability of what the F200 has with a reserve fuel tank in the back, I've got more than that, because I'm worried that I go into a serious headwind, go to high altitude, struggle at very low speeds, and I might need extra fuel. I don't want to go sit down in any place. Didn't end up using it. And ended the race with about 5 liters in the tank. So I would say my general consumption was around 5.2, around the liters per hour, which is a lot for the air flight. I mean, this is a machine that doesn't really consume, when you're flying full trims open on the wall, it doesn't consume more than 4 liters an hour on 2-blade configuration. On 3 blades, a lot less than that. I entered the race, and the margin to Yaku, which was now pulling into second, that arrived at second place in turn point 2. He ended the race about 30 minutes after me. So that was a good result for the Hadron 3. I thought that was, he competed in race 1, didn't get a result. In race 2, he got second place, and that was quite good to see. And after that, the separation between me and third place was around 2.5 hours. And a lot of pilots just got trapped by the mountain, got trapped by the fields, couldn't get out of the fields. So the dynamic of being able to have a glider that is easy to take off with, have the skill to be able to accomplish that, not wasting time refueling in huge volumes, and managing all of this, your fitness level, because you're on speed bar all the time, so your legs get tired. If you can manage all of those things, obviously planning the flight route, what altitude you're going to fly, all of this comes into play when you pick routes. That had a significant effect on this race result with, I believe the Glui with the F1 and the MV2 came in around, I think it was 5th place. So it was 1 went to Dudek on the Warp 2, 2 went to Dudek on the Hadron 3, and both Nirvana combos. Third place, I believe, went to a Parajet and X-Fire combination, X-Fire Pro, and then 4th place was a Dudek Solo. Surprising, they arrived pretty much at the same times. A Dudek Solo on an F-Flight combination, Nirvana F-Flight combination. So the fuel consumption does play a big role if you're not stuck having to take off with a lot of fuel. Guys, remember this. If you have a consumption problem in your motor, meaning that it's running at extremely high RPMs to keep up with the speed bar on whatever glider you picked, I'm going to mention Vitarazi here doing 8 to 10 liters on the average result, 8 to 10 liters an hour when they're pushing 50 miles an hour, a little bit less than 50 miles an hour on a free ride, very tiny free ride or something like that. If they have a result like that, that means they've got to take off with a lot of fuel. If you've got an extended fuel tank, like a 20 or a 17 or a 25 litre fuel tank, you've got something like that, then you've got to manage that fuel tank in very tiny places where the turn point landings are, or the fields are being accessed. So you got to refuel. It might not be necessary for you to refuel because you've got a large extended tank, but you still got to manage a large volume of fuel. Even if you burn some of that off, you have that is a payload question that you'll always have. I think what the difference is with the strategy that Nirvana is following in the speedrun is the fact that we have other technologies that are being used. And specifically, I'm going to refer to the computerized spark that we've got on the F-Lite. We've tuned that in such an effect that we're not running hot, but we're running on a lean carburetor. So we're running at the temperatures that are best for racing, and we have the most amount of power that we could possibly race with, and we're not burning more fuel than we should. The maximum burn you're going to get on something like a full speed bar on the warp is something like 5 to 5.5 liters, and that doesn't increase more than that, even if it's heavy pilots. I mean, Francois Racing is doing less fuel burn than me when I'm on the 18, and he's flying a Warp 22, and he's about 200 pounds, more than 200 pounds. 100 and I believe he's 100 and something kilos, 105 or something like that. So he's heavy on a 200cc, the F-Lite 200. So and he's getting the same consistent fuel burn. Now, we are hoping that those margins are going to close in, and a lot of the pilots didn't finish. I mean, there was 4 places, and then number 5th was Gloei on the Red Bull pilot coming on the MV2 and the F1, APCO F1, and from that there was a few pilots coming in, but they turn around or change the route or something like that. So it's an automatic disqualification from race category, and you're just normal donut racer at that point. I think that the result's pretty good in favor of what we've developed, but it's also getting pilots into a mindset that if there's enough races they can prepare, not from year to year, but from race to race, and try and improve on what their technology is. How can they save fuel? How can they carry more fuel? Or whatever they have to change their strategy to keep up with reducing refuel times, but still being able to be manageable on tighter landing zones and takeoff spots. Okay, so that was the end of race 3. I was really happy to be ahead in spot 1 for such a large margin, but I do know that there's some strategy being changed by some of the other races. I know that Gloei from the Red Bull team is changing over from manufacturers. He's gone from APCO to a different brand. We'll see what that brand is. It's a complete new brand that hasn't raced in the speedrun, so we're really looking forward to seeing that lineup pushing out a different result. Perhaps for him, he's a really good racer. And then he's also changed away from HE to Parajet, so that's going to be nice, right? We're going to have a little bit more. We've already had a few Parajets, but I mean, there's a little bit more of a matchup from those manufacturers. A lot of people are Vitarazi fans, and it's nice for them to see Vitarazi compete in the speedrun as well, to get an idea of how those results come out, whether it's fuel burn or whether it's performance or whatever, doesn't matter. For me, I don't really care about manufacturers. For me, it's really about having fun, getting the races to get better skill, and seeing what the end result is from the different strategies that the teams play out. Nirvana has got more races. We've expanded our team to 4 races, and they are going to be on a combination of H3 and Warp gliders, and I will be switching over from the Warp to the Warp 2 pretty soon. Maybe not for the Speedrun 4. I think that September might even see us have a Speedrun 4 at a different location, and then I'll still be on the Warp 1 18, and then it's gonna be crazy when we hit Speedrun 5 and you've got the first 90 km/h rated Warp 2 glider. That's what we're looking at, boys. It's gonna be 5 km/h faster than the Warp 1, so a little bit of sneak info on that. At least going to be 5 km/h faster. So how are they going to do that? What the sacrifice is going to be? I don't know. Is it going to be more difficult to take off with, more difficult to land, a faster landing speed? Is it going to be less efficient, more efficient? There's so many questions. I mean, there's got to be a sacrifice somewhere, right? The Warp 1 didn't have a sacrifice, but maybe 2 has. It's going to be really interesting to see the result. The H3 is a very consistent glider. I've seen Yaku now improving his result dramatically, going to a faster race time, not even using speed bar. So if he's on the Hadron 3 using speed bar, it's going to be it's going to be a lot closer as far as the result goes. Raymond Lovett's now going to come into the race. He was on race 1 with the Parajet and Luma combination. He's going to go into race 4 with F-Light cross country, same gear as what I'm flying, and then combining that with the Luma until he gets his Hadron 3. So there's some changes there. So we have, and then we obviously have Francois. That's one of the international race team pilots for cross country, flying the Warp 1 combination with F-Light. So there's going to be a wide variety of gliders and machines logged into the race as far as the Nirvana team goes. Obviously, I try and do as much as I can for the race team, but there are some new technologies which we're testing and we're seeing where it's getting us. And boy, do I like having the new kit right here behind me. Same machine, but it's the new 135 propeller. It's a 135 centimeter propeller, 3-blade. It's reduced my fuel burn by full speed bar. Fuel burn is at 3 to 3.5 liters an hour. Full speed bar, boys and girls. That is 42 to 44 knots on this propeller, combined with a computer doing the right job on that propeller. Can I tell you my excitement on that? And then finally, I've got a carb tuner from Vitarazi. I've been working on changing that carb tuner now for the last 3 years. I can see why nobody sells the Vitarazi carb tuner standard, because it's just been a load of disappointments for me on that. I've had so many engine outs with that Vitarazi the standard carb tuner, because it just keeps on breaking the carburetor. It's a combination of the torque the engine puts out and the vibration, everything that comes through. So it's not necessarily, obviously I'm taking the Vitarazi part, putting it on a Nirvana engine. The two weren't designed to be together. And so I've had an enormous amount of trouble to try and adapt this technology so it actually works. It's working now. It's on the F200 with this new propeller. So I can even, some of the results that I've seen is detuned below 3 liters an hour. Full speed bar. So it's going to add a new dynamic. This is where we've been working to for the last 4 years, trying to get a machine to produce the same amount of power as our 3-blade, but it's same amount of power as our 2-blade, but it's a 3-blade, and it's brought the fuel consumption down from the heavy consumption to 5 liters, but it can breaking that consumption down to what you would have for a general jog around at around 3 liters now, 3.5. That's what we're looking at. So new technology is coming into play. I'm going to be only one flying this kit right now until I can have confidence in it, and Nirvana can have confidence in it that it's technologies we can put into production. So all prototypes, and what better place to test prototypes than the hard impact world of cross-country racing. Remember the difference between cross-country racing and pylon racing. You've got to be efficient. You've got to have power to do fast and enough power to do heavy climb rates, but at full speeds. And you've got to have a motor that'll take it for 2 hours. At least if you're the fastest racer like I am currently on the Speedrun, you're going to have a motor that runs at its top RPM for at least 2 hours. That means, whatever your temperatures are that you're used to running on whatever motor you're running at, you know that you're going to have to maintain that for a long period of time. And your glider, if you're going to fly full speed bar, in the pylon racing, you've got those are short bursts of energy, short runs that they do on those races where it's 4 or 5 minutes worth of racing. Now you've got to maintain those speeds for 2 hours. So it's a lot more impact on the machines. You're not seeing the really big caliber machines coming into the fold here. This is really the 200cc domain. We are working on a larger engine as well that will go into the pylon racing pretty soon. I'm heading out to Nirvana in October to see if we can finish the development on that motor. But currently this 200 is just the bang. It does the 200-pound racer, does the lighter 160-pound racer, and it's doing a good combination of everything. Alright guys, that's my update for Speedrun 3. I'll see you on the Speedrun 4. If you've got any questions, let me know. If you need any advice, go to www.durekwingman.com. Right there you're going to find a combination of experts, cross-country, acro and pylon racing. They're going to give you the best advice as far as Direk goes. We also interact. None of these pilots fly a fixed motor brand. They're a combination of Vitarazi, or something interesting like the Polini 303 for our leader Loyak that's racing the 303 in the Direk Snake 3. You can give great advice as far as the heavy motors go. And yeah, so get advice from us. That's what we're here for. We're here to help. I'll see you in the next one.